So welcome back, everyone. It's a gorgeous fall day in Seattle, and it's Kelly from Women for One. And today we're having this incredible conversation. I know it's going to be a fabulous conversation with a powerful woman, and I'd like to introduce her, Koren Motekaitis. Did I do that right, Koren?
You did it right.
All right. Koren Motekaitis is first and foremost a mom. I have a deep respect for moms, and she actually has stepchildren that, like I have, but she calls them bonus children, which I love. I think that's fabulous. She's a mom. She's an entrepreneur. She is also a coach to people as well. And she has a radio show and podcast of her own called How She Really Does It, which is a place where inspiration and possibility meet. And I absolutely love that tagline, and I want to talk about it today with her. And we're going to talk about a lot of other incredible things. She's interviewed some powerful people and has also been, as a child, she was a competitive swimmer and a swim coach, and she's also a tenured college faculty member. And it just sounds, I can't wait to speak with you today, Koren, so welcome.
Well, Kelly, thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor, but it's also really weird to have the tables turned. So,
well, and as I told you before we got on the phone, it's almost. I have so much respect for you and what you do, and we're so aligned in what we do, where we're asking women to come and bring out their greatest wisdom for us, so that we can all share and become more connected. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So we can just thrive in our lives.
Yes, to thrive. And I want to first start so our community can really understand kind of your background and what led you to a life of sharing your wisdom and speaking to people. And how were you inspired to serve others like this?
I was just trying to figure it out myself, Kelly. Honestly, I've always been a coach. And one of the reasons that I became a swim coach, it really was a way to go into a totally different industry, and I was still a college student. But then one of the things that kept me there was I made it way harder for myself. And after I became a national champion in college, I said, oh my gosh, it just doesn't have to be this hard. Like, why did I do all this drama? And so my idea with coaching kids was, let me just show you a way to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's been kind of a constant theme for me. And then the other theme is about how can I create safe places for people to have connections, right? And so whether I do that with my radio show or, I still run this youth swim team in town, or the groups that I run, it's about how can I create safe places for people to connect, whether it's with themselves or with other people. It's usually with both. Like with my one-on-one clients, it's obviously with themselves and, maybe with me. But so those have been kind of my two themes of how can I help you. So it did come about in that roundabout way, but a lot of it was because I went through my own struggles of trying to figure it out. And then it wound up being, oh my gosh, there's this great way out here. How can I show you?
Isn't that great when you figure something out and that you can actually break it down and share those steps with others so that they can improve themselves?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So with what you do on an individual level, I love the safe places for people to have connection, because I think, a lot of us, especially as women around the world or even in the U.S., do not feel safe to have those deep connections, to be like, to falter, to not be perfect. I like that theme comes up for me a lot when I'm speaking to women, just this place of really allowing for themselves to be imperfect and embracing that within themselves. Can you speak to that a little?
Oh my gosh. Well, right there, those are the shame gremlins, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I allow myself to not be perfect, then, I'll never be good enough. I'll never achieve. And we're so often we're hustling for worthiness. I was an approval whore. I was out there constantly trying to get other people's approval. And then as soon as I got it, I would drop them in a heartbeat because, well, if you like me, you must be a loser. And then I'd go find somebody else. So it wasn't very long lasting, and it definitely wasn't sustainable.
Wow. So you just dropped them. So you had a low self-esteem at that point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because, I was Miss Loser from Loserville. And then it's like, if I can get you to buy into me, now I receive approval, but wait a second, if you like me, what's wrong with you?
Right. Those shame, as you said, shame gremlins are a bitch. They really are. And what's fascinating to me is, I keep doing this work and I'm working with these incredible people, and then it comes up again. It's this evolution of almost like, okay, here it is again. How am I going to react this time? And having that choice every single time to move into a different space around what we're going to be doing with our lives and how we want to react.
Well, and I think you said something really critical right there. It's about the choice that we want to do, right? What's the choice we're going to make? And realizing that maybe when we were a child in our family of origin, we didn't have choices, but now as grown women, we do. So what are the choices we want to make? And does it fit within the lives that we have?
Yes, absolutely. And if you think about it, Koren, I mean, really, what is it that we all really want? I mean, I just did a retreat and conducted a retreat with 40 women. And bottom line, we just want joy and peace in our lives. I mean, it feels like everybody wants that. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. And what do you think would be a model for that success, for gaining that joy and peace that you teach to your individual clients and your groups, and then also the team that you coach?
Well, I think the joy thing is really hard. Brene Brown talks about foreboding joy, right? To feel joy and allow it to live with it is really one of the most vulnerable things that you could ever do, right? Because we're so programmed for loss and scarcity. Oh, once I really get this, then I'm going to lose it.
I love that. Right.
Or the idea that you'll be watching your child sleep and you'll be so filled with this amazing love and joy, and then you go, oh my gosh, but they're going to leave for college in 10 years, right? And what am I going to do? Or, oh my gosh, they can get hit by a car, and so we don't allow ourselves, I call it I have this little metaphor where I talk about, the getting out of the ghetto and then, being in the promised land. So like a lot of times I'll use East Palo Alto and Stanford, right? For those people that are from Northern California, East Palo Alto is just over the freeway. It's not that far from Stanford. But to get out of the ghetto and to be comfortable and they think that you belong in Stanford, not that I'm thinking, Stanford is this idyllic place, but this is just a metaphor, people. It's how can I feel comfortable that I belong here? How can I feel comfortable in the state of joy without going into I'm a fraud, or all those shame gremlins coming up again, or I'm going to lose it, right? There's not enough for me. So those things keep coming up, and being comfortable in that joy. So I think that's one of the things to practice is just learning how to feel joy, which seems like so ridiculous, Kelly. And I always tell my clients, I go, I'm a 42-year-old woman and I'm learning how to stand and how to walk. I have back issues and stuff, and I have swimmer posture. And so I'm learning that. I mean, I could be shitting on myself and saying, I should know how to walk, I should know how to stand, and what the hell is wrong with me? But that doesn't get me anywhere. That just creates more shame. And so for me, it's about who's on my team that can help me, and I'm learning how to engage some muscles that I've never used.
Wow. And it's the same thing with joy. And when you said that about learning how to stay in that joy, I wrote the word down, sustain. To sustain that state of joy. That really... I was on an elevator this morning, Koren, and it was so amazing. I was going up to my doctor in a place where, huge polyclinic in Seattle where everybody's in somewhat of a fear because they're going to see their doctor about something that's ailing. And there was this little boy who was 3 years old, and he was in his mama's arms, and he was like, look at the lights, look at the elevator, we're going up. He was in a complete state of joy. And I watched him, and I was like, it brought me out of my, oh my gosh, what's the doctor going to say today about my thyroid? Oh, it just, and to be able to hold on to that, I want to know how to do that a little bit. We all do, to stay in that space.
Yeah. No, and I mean, we're meaning-making creatures, and so, if we could just be like that kid, right, and be able to just see that without all these stories, and having the listening, I find, and I don't know if this is the same for you, Kelly, but those shame gremlin voices are so loud, right? And who would I be if I could just show up without that?
Showing up without the shame gremlin voices, the shame voice, right? Voice. And when it gets louder, what do you do? What are some tools you use?
Well, this is a practice because we can't get rid of shame, as you know, as Brené has talked about. So I really practice being shame resilient. So I check in with it, you know, and I listen to the voice. I own it. That this is something that's being said, because it's kind of that, you know, when you first get sick and you have that low grade, but you just kind of push through. And I used to be really good. I'd push through, like I'd be in the middle of the flu before I would finally like throw up the white flag, right? And now it's like I know those little subtleties, like, ooh, I'm feeling a little bit. What can I do? How can I rest? Is there, you know, should I go take vitamin C? Whatever my tools are. But so now it's the same thing. It's like listening to those subtleties, listening to those voices, and checking in. You know, is it really true? Recognizing it. One of the things that I practice is shame needs to be spoken, and with somebody who's earned the right to hear it. So I know who my safe people are, and at times maybe I don't have people, you know, in that moment. But what can I do with it? Maybe it's I write. Maybe I sit down and I really go through and go, what are these stories am I telling myself? Are they true? Right? So the big thing I don't do is I really work on and I really practice not going into judgment. Or if I judge, I try to move out of that quickly, because I know that is not a good place for me.
And okay, so in summarizing, I wrote down shame needs to be spoken with someone who has earned the right to witness it. I think that's huge. That's an aha for me, as Oprah would say. That's a huge one for me, because there's a lot of times when I'm feeling it, I just want to say it because I'm a communicator. And you know, holding that, not casting pearls before swine is what I say. You know, holding that space where you can really process with someone that can be respectful and witness and not judge you back or interpret it from their angle. First of all, I love that. But the no judgment place, though, I'm curious when you talk about no judgment. Okay, so no judgment means to me, obviously we're always going to constantly have judgment. Does it mean that to you, or does it mean like getting removed from it? Because a lot of times I find that women especially shove it down. I'm not going to judge it, or push it away, or avoid it, instead of going, I'm judging myself and releasing it. Like, I'm judging, okay. You know?
Well, so that's a really good point that you brought up. It's about noticing, like, oh my gosh, I'm judging myself, or oh my gosh, I'm beating myself up. I mean, I've known intuitively from a really, probably young age, but like in my adulthood, when I was probably in my early 20s, that I like compassionate people. And so here's something, I've just put this together in the last 6 months. My dental hygienist, I've gone to him since probably 1995. And I will not see anybody else in that office. They are all incredibly nice people, but I love him. And here is why. When I was growing up, I had a lot of dental work done. I'd broken my teeth, I had a swimmeat and stuff, and then I had braces. So, you know, I spent a lot of time in the dental chair. I was constantly shamed about how I was not doing a good enough job. And it wasn't so good. I mean, tell me what teenager's like really interested in taking care of their teeth, right?
Right.
And so, you know, you're always told what you weren't doing. And so it was always this like shame storm going into any dental office. And then when I went to him, I was like, you know, you could probably floss. I'm like, yeah, I didn't really. I was like, that's okay. Just work on it. You'll get better. I was like, really? You're not going to sit here and give me a lecture about why I'm supposed to? I was just astounded. And I got to the point, and he was so gentle, and he was so friendly, and he created this safe place. Every time I go, he's the only person. I will not see anybody else but him. And it's a really nice place. So that was probably like my first step. And then when I look at the team of people that I've had in my life, either people that I have that are professionals in my life that help me, or friends, I gravitate towards those kind of people. Now, in the same instance, I used to beat the crap out of myself, right? And I still can. I'm not saying that I don't, but I try to catch that instead of allow myself to live in that.
So that positive self-talk, and I totally get where you're coming from with people. Because what I related it to with your dental hygienist is that is the type of parent I want to be as much as possible. That parent that's the advocate. The advocate, the cheerleader, the coach, not the positive coach. Obviously, I have negative connotations of coaches from being a gymnast. But the positive coach that's like, I'm your advocate. And you know what? You can do it. not just having that awareness and just allowing, almost empowering that person to make the choice, the effective choice, instead of pushing them and shaming them into making the choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when I'm an athletic coach, it's a little bit more hardcore. Because I do think like part of the job is to keep people accountable, right?
Yes.
And keeping people accountable, means like boundaries are really big. And part of me sometimes goes, oh, I'm really good with boundaries. And as soon as I think that, it's like, oh, there's this another opportunity to learn. Somebody will test my boundaries. And I used to get really mad, like, don't they respect my boundaries? and then I would realize that, oh, these are my fence posts. If I don't maintain them and make sure they stay up, nobody else is going to do that because they're mine. And I think about, he would nudge me along and create the safe place, but I was also an adult. If he could come down on me hard, but would that really be effective, right? And compassionate people have boundaries.
Yes.
And that's the part that's really important. And as a parent, I can really suck at it. Like, I can, get really, really mad. And then I'm like, oh, gosh, that was so ineffective. But then I circle back. Mm-hmm. And I try to work through things and say, okay, this is, how are we being as a team? But yeah, I can really suck at parenting.
Can't we all? I mean, it's such a great learning and lesson for me every single day. And I just think about a year ago today compared to now, I'm a completely different parent. I have learned so much in this last year. Like, I'm actually right now I'm somewhat really proud of myself, which is good because I usually beat myself up on my parenting because I don't feel like I had any model to come from. But right now I'm like, wow, I am so different than I was a year ago. So the lessons that are learned through this parenting role is amazing to me. And speaking of roles, how do you, with all of the different roles that you have in your life, I mean, you've taken on, I get it, you're a powerful woman that has taken on so many different roles. How do you create those boundaries? Like, what is the process you go through? Because it sounds like you feel really good about setting them and you've understood how to create that process. Can you share with our community a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really values driven. So, and that's something, if you asked me 10 years ago, I would have had no idea what the hell you were talking about. But I know what my values are. And then over time, I've made small changes. I've noticed, like, where were the problems, right? Where could I not hold myself together? And then I kind of look back like, okay, what triggered that? So, for instance, with the swim team, love the swim team. And some people have my cell phone number because they're my friends. Some people may have had my cell phone number because at one point I would put that on pretty much every parenting forum out there, right? So it was on all these class rosters. Right. But I more than happily put. And then now we have Facebook, and people like to send messages, and I don't even have instant messenger on my phone anymore. And then there's the email based, and then my home phone number. So sometimes people will call me on my cell phone, they don't really call the home phone, which is interesting. Send me an email, send me a Facebook message, and text me because they're trying to get a hold of me. And so one of the things that I've had to do is teach. Dr. Phil says this. I'm not a big Dr. Phil fan, but this is probably the smartest thing I've ever heard him say. We teach people how to treat us. And so, like, kind of in group emails to the team and our distribution list, I'd say, if you're contacting me about Aqua Monster stuff, please do it via email because that's my work process. If you're contacting me on Facebook, that's where I play. And if you're sending me a text message, I'm expecting an invitation to lunch or coffee.
Oh, that's great. It's clear.
And so those are kind of like my boundaries. Now, the thing is that if somebody texts me about the swim team, I have to circle back from an email, partly because I hate texting, long answers on with my thumbs. I just don't like it. And then second is then I also restate, I prefer to keep Aqua Monster stuff in email. That way I can find it if I need to, right? Versus a text in a phone. So that's me recircling back to that. So that's how I but that's taken me a long time to get to that, right? There was a lot of frustration, a lot of feelings of violation, prior to that. And then for me to contemplate, and that probably took me 2 years to take the courage to write that email, Kelly.
Wow. And that's fabulous that, you talk about the values driven and then you can do that with boundaries. I find I can tell when someone doesn't have decent boundaries either way, whether they can't set them and they take on too much and they just let people seep in, or whether they really get angry and kind of come into your boundaries when they have to do it in this very non-assertive way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's this place where they're like, no, I can't do that. Like, you don't have to do that, I've realized. As a woman, you can just say, here are my boundaries in an assertive way. It's not angry. It's not passive. It's not aggressive. It's not passive. It's assertive. And I love that because it sounds like you got to that place with the boundaries and used a tool to be able to communicate those boundaries to everyone around you.
But the thing is that your cup has to be full before you can do that, right? And so, like, when I would lash out at people, it was because I was running around being a martyr and saying, hey, look at how hard I serve, look at how much I give, and then I wasn't filling myself up, and then I would blame other people, right? So and so the other side is like when you say, well, how do you do it? I'm the first person on my priority list. And
how she really does it. That's your quote. I am the first person on my priority list. Yeah. That's great.
And that sounds really selfish. And I know my clients struggle with this. And just the other day, a client finally said, she was like, you know what? I'm on the top of my priority list. And I pulled up some old notes. I was like, yeah. And I read her priority list from, 5 months ago or something. And she was nowhere to be found. But I've had to learn that. And so what that looks like for me is that, I will go work out first thing in the morning because there's less interference in the day than if I try to do it like later in the day, something's going to come up. I give myself permission to go to the grocery store because I'm a person who takes care of herself and I feed myself nourishing foods, right? I give myself permission to cook because that's not only does it take care of me, but it takes care of my family. Where my old saying was, well, I'm a busy person. Who has time to do this? Right? This is ridiculous. This is such an inconvenience. I mean, I need to eat. My family needs to eat. Right?
Yes.
But so being a priority, and it doesn't mean that all day long, because I really believe of being a service, but I really look at, okay, what needs to be filled up inside of me so that I can give, and maybe that's, I don't check email at night anymore, late at night. And so I usually come home and a lot of times, I'll connect with my family really quickly and then I'll go to bed, or maybe I need to read, or maybe I'll watch TV. But what is it that I need to do to fill myself up so that I can spend the day giving again?
I love that because, Ariana Huffington was speaking actually on my website right now, but also at this conference about doing a digital detox and really asking yourself daily, making it your mantra, what is it that I need? And I love that you added to be of service to myself, my family, and the world. I like that because it feels, when you sit there and say, make yourself the priority, we've heard that so many times, but it's like you coached people to do that. So how do you get there? And that's one of the steps. And I also love that you talked about, I give myself permission. I actually want to write 10 things down that I give myself permission for after this call. Because it's kind of a manifesto, right? I give myself permission daily.
Yeah, it's really huge, like to give because there's so many shoulds, right? Again, it goes back to that judgment. I really eliminate that word should from my vocabulary. I haven't had it in a number of years. And it was something that I became hyper aware of. And it was almost always rolling off my tongue. Well, that's a judgment word. So it's like, okay, well, what is it that I want? Yeah, I should get 8 hours of sleep, but the wild child in me is like, well, nobody's going to be the boss of me. Let me show you. And I would stay up until 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. That served nobody because then I was just a nightmare the next day, right? I want to sleep because I feel better and my brain works better, So it's just about like, okay, what is it that I want? Versus a should feels like it's coming from somebody else.
So it's the comparative of choice or victimhood, or choice or have-tos, and judgment, and really changing that language in your brain. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's really important.
So with all of everything you've done in your life with coaching people and working on yourself, being values-driven, we have women from all over the world at Women for One. They're from every different country. We have a strong following in the Middle East. And from all the people that you've interviewed, what do you find are just one or two powerful themes about either the feminine or women currently today that are prevalent or that are valuable and important to you and to the other women you've interviewed?
I think it goes back to that voice of, I'm enough, right? It's not about arriving, but I'm enough. And doing it from a place of compassion. I think people are so afraid to be compassionate, and I know I was, because it was like, well, if I'm not constantly striving and, hustling for people's approval, then I'm just going to sit around on the couch and eat bonbons and watch TV all day long. But my story for that is, tell me what year, I don't know what, I can't even remember anymore because I've been so far out of that part of parenting, but what 2-year-old or 1-year-old, remember that saying, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but it was like, oh, you can't carry your baby too much because then they're never going to want to learn how to walk, right?
Yes.
My kids were squirming out of my arms.
Right.
It's like, let me down, me do it. We're internally wired to grow. And the thing that I think stops us from growing and wanting to learn and explore is it comes down to shame, because shame is the ultimate form of disconnection. So if we can let go of that belief of, we can't be compassionate, we have to beat the crap out of ourselves so that we can really strive and be excellent. If we can go, because that just leads to shame and it's a downward spiral. If we can be compassionate with ourselves, understanding that there are boundaries.
Right.
So that we can grow and really thrive and connect. And within, people, you and I are very fortunate to be women born at this time in this country, where some of our listeners may not have those same opportunities. But how can you stand your sacred ground given the circumstances that you have in your life? And that's going to be different in some ways for different people or different cultures. But how can you, so that's where, can you say, I am enough, right? And maybe I don't get that opportunity to vote, but I am enough as a human being.
I am enough. I am enough. I completely agree with everything you're saying. I mean, you said it so beautifully, I don't even need to comment on it. It's true. It's about being enough. I just got a letter from one of my team member in Egypt, and it was a very long letter about what she's been through and what she experiences daily, and it's so shocking compared to what we experience in our culture. I mean, she'll lose a friend to violence. And it'll just be, a normal thing. And her mom is depressed because of not having any money and the father dying and the role of women. It's just a whole different experience in the culture, but all the same principles can be applied to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I love that piece. So the last thing I wanted to ask you is, I always ask people this, what your definition of truth or authenticity is?
For me, it's about being me, rooted in my wholehearted self. It's about being, authenticity is about being me, showing up, and being grounded in a place of compassion, right? Letting, my heart, I think, is really powerful. And I think I've learned, probably in childhood, and I have some specific incidences, but to cover up that heart where I care, because that was too vulnerable. And so for me, it's about being rooted in my wholehearted self.
Being rooted in that's beautiful. So do you have anything coming up, or how can our community, in what different ways can our community connect with you? I want to kind of revisit all the ways that they can connect with you.
Well, thank you. So my website is How She Really Does It, and they can sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to be doing a lot of work about, the Daring Way, which is based on Brene Brown's research. I've already got a bunch of stuff that's going on right now with that. I'll be having upcoming retreats, some online groups. I run weight loss coaching circles, and I have an e-course that I'm not sure when it's going to go up. So there's nothing, right now I'm in the midst of a lot of stuff, but there's great content on my site, and there's a weekly newsletter that comes out every Friday.
And also we can listen to you speak to powerful women from around the world as well.
Absolutely. There's over 404 shows. I've just recently changed. Tomorrow's going to be the first day of it. I've changed the format of my show. So I'm having guest visiting co-hosts. And so we're having conversations. And so there's going to be somebody that's going to come on for 4 to 8 episodes. And right now, the first person is Michelle Woodward, and then the next person is Jennifer Loudon. And so we can have just these deeper conversations, about, because I think small things matter, like, and how you asked me about, okay, what does the priority of you mean? You being the top of your priority list, because so many women would be like, well, that's fine and dandy for her. She's probably got this easygoing life, My day started at 4:45 today, and I will be done working at 9, So, sometimes I'll say I'm pretty much a single parent. My husband doesn't really like that. Or I'm a coach widow, and it's not in victimhood. Like, it's just owning what my circumstances are right now because of what his work schedule is.
And what your choices are, right?
Yeah, and they're my choices, But for me to go, okay, I'm a coach widow, he's off coaching, that works a lot better than for me to expect him to be home, and he's really not going to be right now.
Right. I love that you're having Jen Loudon on. She's becoming a Women for One truth teller next week, so we're very excited to have her because she's local as well. Well, I am so excited to have spoken with you. I loved being on your show as well, and I would encourage all of the women listening to this. Koren is one of those women. Are you still doing coaching?
I am still doing coaching. Yeah.
I really encourage everyone that feels resonance with Koren to check in with her. I'm more and more really aligning with people that I find are my tribe, people that I resonate with, because then I can uplift myself and learn and be of service to others even more. So thank you again, Koren, for your time, and I'm really honored to have spoken with you today.
Thank you, Kelly. This was fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. Thank you very much. Take care.